Hi, you're listening to When Isabel Met Aviva, a podcast about rom-coms, female-driven screenwriting, and how to break into the entertainment industry. I'm Aviva.
And I'm Isabel.
And today, we always say this, but we have an extra exciting episode, an interview. And I don't think this is fully sunk in.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking this is kind of the for our podcast name, I feel like this is like the biggest interview we kind of could get for it. So
yeah,
I'm actually pretty proud of us for, mostly proud of you because you're the one who made this happen. Yeah. But to be only 3 seasons into our podcast.
Yeah, and it's been about a year. But anyway, we should say we're interviewing Delia Ephron.
Ephron.
The famous writer, producer, playwright, novelist. And she co-wrote, You've Got Mail.
Yeah.
which we've referenced in so many episodes.
Yeah. I feel like she's, the sister of Nora Ephron, but we also love her filmography. She's done a lot of great movies that we love. She adapted The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, which was one of my favorite book series growing up, and definitely one of my favorite movies that I watched as a teenager.
Same. Seen that movie so many times, and read all those books, of course. And she wrote Bewitched, which I've seen, of course. I think I saw that in theaters.
So I really, really love the movie that her and Nora did together. This Is My Life, which I think is the first time that Nora directed a movie. And I think Delia I can't remember if Delia fully wrote the script or if they wrote it together.
Yeah.
But that was also a book adaptation movie. But I think part of what I love about that movie so much is the wittiness of all the lines between the kids and just how I don't know, it feels very ahead of its time. And so I think it kind of, for me, feels like both Delia and Nora just were so good at writing dialogue, and I think that gives so much life to these characters and all these movies that we love.
Definitely, yeah. And Gabby Hoffman, the little girl, now she's an adult, but is in that one, and Sleepless, and she's fantastic. She's so good. I would love to talk about with her too one day. But yeah, I just don't think it's fully sunk in. Our podcast is dedicated to the Ephron sister filmography.
Yeah, right. I know. It's I keep thinking that I'm this is the interview.
Yeah, it's crazy. And this has been we've wanted to talk to Delia since the beginning. I'm she's on a list of people we've targeted, but it felt kind of far-fetched. But yeah, it's happening. So yeah, she has a Broadway debut that just happened in October of 2024. So just last month when we're filming this. And so we want to talk to her about that. I think that'd be incredibly vulnerable to see your memoir acted out on stage every night.
So cool, though.
Yeah, that takes guts. I feel
I know.
Because memoirs are very personal. So yeah, I mean, is there anything else to say?
I feel like we should let her say.
Yeah, let's chat with Delia Ephron.
Yeah, let's bring Delia in. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you making the time to chat with us. It's such an honor to be able to chat with you. We're big fans of your work.
Thank you so much. Lovely. That's nice to hear that.
We would love to begin, of course. Congratulations about your Broadway debut.
Yeah, it's so exciting.
And we would love to hear about your play and how that came to be. And it's a memoir adaptation.
My goodness, where to begin? Well, it was such a dream. It was a dream too big to have, really. And it's been thrilling. I never even imagined I would have a play on Broadway, and to have it with this amazing director and producer and cast has just been magical. But it is based on my story, and it's very strange to have been, writing dramas my whole life, both in novels as well as in books and novels as well as movies, and to suddenly realize that I had lived one. I've almost met all the rules of drama, and was rather an amazing story. And when I was writing my memoir, I began to think, well, maybe I could do this as a play. And I'd never written a play. And I just thought, I mean, Nora and I did Love, Loss, and What I Wore, but it's women in front of music stands reading from a script. So it isn't a staged big play like this. And I thought, well, maybe I could try this. I think it suited. And I took the book to Daryl Roth, who's this absolutely wonderful Broadway producer who produces an enormous amount of things of substance as well as women's stories. And she loved it and said that she thought Susan Stroman was the right director for it. And I grew up on musicals, so I was practically in ecstasy when he suggested Susan Stroman. And we met, and it was a perfect match. We just really liked each other. And so it suddenly was taking off in this very magical way. And it's a very personal story, of losing my husband and then finding love in the most ridiculous way by my internet crashing and having a big war with the phone company and
Wow.
writing about it. And then suddenly Peter turns up in the mail, just like You've Got Mail. I mean, the whole thing was so insane. I thought I've fallen into my own romantic comedy, and then it turns very dark. I mean, I got diagnosed with a very serious illness, and we got married in the hospital, and Peter just really, he really saved my life. I mean, I had amazing doctors, but he's also a doctor. He's a psychiatrist, and he was just there every minute for me. So the story, I knew it had everything. It was so emotional. It was funny. And it was it's a roller coaster. The play is just a roller coaster emotionally, but everybody who sees it now says, this is what I need right now. Some sense that there's really happiness and that you take chances and that, life can, it's a comfort. The play is comforting now. In addition, just going somewhere where you're laughing and you're crying and then you're happy again. And I think life's very difficult now out there in the world. And this is a world that we all live in, this play. I mean, it's a safer world that we all live in, but it's the world of our choices. So
I understand that the play debuted in October, correct?
Yes.
What was it like to, see your story acted in front of you? That must have been.
Well, first of all, let me just say is a most loving cast. I don't, what collaboration can be difficult and it can be tricky, and to get this perfect a group where everybody is supporting everyone else and loving everyone else. And my cast, Juliana Margulies and Peter Gallagher, the chemistry is so gorgeous on stage. And if you don't have that in a romance, you don't have anything. And they're very lovely people. And the other two actors who play like 17 other parts, they're brilliant. Kate McCluggage and Peter Francis James. So it was and I think Susan Stroman always works with people who are not just, as good as it gets, amiable. So that it was just for my thinking, God, this out of that. I mean, out of my story, that we were able to have this. And I'm watching myself almost die every night, right, in the rehearsals. And, Peter Gallagher said, how is this for you? And I just kept thinking this out of that. How did I get this?
Yeah.
And my Peter got to go on stage on opening night, which made me really happy. After it opens, everybody goes on stage who's worked on the play, and they wanted Peter to come too. So it was exciting for him.
That's lovely. I saw in some other interviews that you did that you were set up with your husband, right? Like you had kind of a full circle moment. Didn't you go on a date with your partner now years ago?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And I thought it was one date, but apparently it was a few dates.
Yeah.
And,
oh, wow.
Wait, how did you guys realize that?
No memory of it at all. Parents, I almost fainted when I realized that. So
oh my God.
There you go.
That is such a rom-com.
Yeah, that is a rom-com moment in itself.
We call it a trom-com because more a rom-com, just because there's so much, there's big threat in it, but it's emotionally, it's very romantic, the story. The story is really romantic.
Yeah, if we were in New York, we would see it. We're on the West Coast.
Maybe we'll go there. You never know.
I was gonna say, I can always take a weekend getaway to New York.
Yeah.
Where are you located?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh,
I'm in Seattle area, outside of Seattle.
Seattle?
I'm in Seattle. Yeah.
Are you friends?
We actually met on the internet through, well, I guess we met on Twitter, right? Originally,
Yeah.
we're both screenwriters. And so we, I guess like during the pandemic, a lot of screenwriters were on Twitter kind of like sharing scripts with each other. So we kind of just met through that. And we both, well, our podcast is called When is Metaviva because one of our favorite movies is When Harry Met Sally. And I
Oh,
actually
that's
used,
wonderful.
yeah, I used to live in Seattle too. So Aviva and I didn't know each other at the time, but we definitely have a lot of shared interests both in screenwriting, film, and so we kind of just became internet friends. We've never actually met in
We're gonna meet
person.
one day.
Never met in person.
We haven't met in
No.
person yet, yeah.
Holy cow.
Wild times. Yeah. So we would love to hear about your writing journey and how you like, did you always know you wanted to be a writer and how did you get into screenwriting?
Well, I was raised in a family, my parents were screenwriters, and my mother was very adamant that her daughters have careers. She had 4 daughters, and she was very proud of the fact that she worked. And none of the other, at that time, none of the other mothers worked. And my mother would always say, I don't have time to go to open school night because I'm working. So we would be very proud. Oh, mom doesn't have time to go to school to hear what I'm doing. But, she turned everything about her work as a great thing in our lives, even when it wasn't totally a great thing in our lives. But there was an incredible sense of destiny for all 4 daughters, and that we would leave. We didn't all do this, by the way, but we would all leave Los Angeles, and eventually we would become writers. And she did not ever say, you will be a writer, but unspoken messages in families are every bit as strong as spoken messages. So I knew that that was my destiny. And my sister Nora, of course, she was like shot out of a cannon, so she knew she'd be a writer when she was born. But I came to it a little later, and then Amy came to it a little later, and then Hallie came to it. We all put it off a bit, but we all ended up there. I mean, every time I said something funny, my dad shouted, "That's a great line, write it down." If I said something else, he'd say, "That's a great title, write it down." I've spent my life carrying titles around with me. I had left on 10 years ago as a title.
wow.
I didn't know what it went with. It began to have metaphor when I went through this experience. There it is. That's what it's for. So we were really raised with the idea that we would have careers, and that we would the subtext always was that you will be a writer. So I sort of messed up my 20s. I think you can mess up your 20s and still have a life. I'm evidence of that, and so are most of my friends. So I just married the first man who asked me and moved to Rhode Island. And then I realized, my life was disappearing. I had this life and I wasn't doing anything with it. And, I better figure it out. And I had a business crocheting at that time. I was crocheting purses and belts for New York department stores. And so I was at a party in New York one day, and I went up to an editor and I said, this is so pathetic. I said, I know you'd never be interested in this, but would you look like a book about crocheting? And he said, yes.
Oh.
I mean, really? Right. I wrote up a proposal, and my best friend then, his name was Lori, she was an artist and she did all these drawings. We were in business together, and we gave it to this editor at Simon and Schuster. And the next thing, we had a book contract. I mean, it was so much easier to operate then, that this, I couldn't even believe this happened. So I wrote a crochet book, and then I wrote a book about redoing your clothes. And then I did a crafts calendar. Okay, I'm not even writing. I'm just saying to myself, you're not really writing, you're just writing directions. So, and then I thought, and then I knew I needed to get divorced because, first of all, I wasn't in love with my husband, which is a very good reason to get divorced. But the other reason was, I said to him, I really think I want to be a writer. And you know what it's like to say a dream out loud. I mean, that's a really big deal, right? And he said, I don't want you to be a writer. And I said, why? And he said, suppose you become famous. I don't want you to become famous. And I said, this is so pathetic. I said, I promise I won't be famous. So obviously I had to leave him.
I you did.
Better get out, right? So I left and went to New York to the arms of my girlfriends. And I said, well, okay, I have enough money to last a year, and I've got to become a writer within a year. And I knew I had to get published in the New York Times. I analyzed, I really looked at it carefully. Where do I need to make a mark to, become a writer? And I knew it was the New York Times. And it was almost about 9 months in, and I was like down to like $300, which would have been 500 if I hadn't fallen in love with an orange coat. And, and I'm sitting at home eating chocolate pudding one day, and I realized I'm eating like a child, making a little hole in the top and scooping the pudding out from underneath the skin. And I thought, I could do a piece about how children eat food. So I wrote 500 words called How to Eat Like a Child. And was just directions. I knew how to write directions because I had written crochet books. So I sold it to the New York Times, and it was a sensation. It went viral. We didn't have viral then, but it did.
Yeah.
And I was offered a book contract the next day.
Oh my gosh.
And that was my first book, How to Eat Like a Child and Other Lessons in Not Being a Grown-Up. And it was a bestseller. Awesome. And then every year or so, I would think, I need to learn something new now. I need to learn to write an essay. So then I needed to learn that. And then I think I started writing. I fell in love with Jerry, my husband of many years, who was a screenwriter. And I thought, I wouldn't mind trying that too. And then I started working with Nora. And then I realized, you know what? I have my own stories to tell. So then I thought, I got to learn to write a novel. So then I learned to do that. So really, it was very serious commitment. And one of the things I think about writing is, in the beginning it was really hard. So I made myself sit down every day from 10 to 12 at my desk, and then from 2 to 4, and I couldn't get up. I couldn't get up to make tea or anything. I didn't have to write, but wasn't allowed to leave. So first it was hard, then it was habit, and then it became love. Now I just love to write. So, I mean, I take writing seriously. Yeah. I mean, I took it was not an accidental journey. I got lucky in many ways, but I knew I had to figure things out, and I knew I had to learn certain things, and I knew they were hard to learn.
All writers, I feel like when we have like these different ways that we write, and I'm kind of curious, like, especially with your play, like you said earlier that you felt like you wanted to write it as a play, like that specific story. Do you ever find, like, do you notice when something feels like it should be a movie, when it should be a book, when it should be a play? Like, how do you know?
Absolutely. That is something that from a story, that you have an idea and where it would fit, where it belongs. And this one, I also sold it to the movie. So it's a very, it's a perfect drama, but I wanted to learn to write a play. Yeah. And I thought it would be an amazing adventure. So, and I knew it was very suited to that. And also, here's what I don't like about screenwriting. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I mean, you're hired and you're fired. Mm-hmm. But a book writer is not fired, and a playwright is not fired. They may not publish your book, or they may not put on your play, but they cannot replace you. Mm-hmm. They don't own your work. And I knew very early that did not suit me.
Yeah. Yeah, so much more creative control in other media.
Yeah. I mean, and also, screenwriters are not happy. I mean, a lot of them are, but there's a lot of complaining in that world. I mean, there's complaining in every world, because book publishing can be brutal, and I'm sure theater is as well. But the ownership moment, the fact that it's yours, that you own it, that no one can take your story and said, make the dog a cat, or make the truck driver an airplane pilot. You know what I mean? That nobody's, we don't want you anymore. The actor has someone they work with, or the director wants to rewrite it themselves. I mean, it's a powerless job with good pay, or at least it was good for me. So I always knew I needed these other outlets for my own stories.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that just made me think of something too, because I feel like I actually learned how to write plays before I learned how to write screenplays, because I grew up in Ohio, and like my teacher, I remember like the day I asked him if he could teach me how to write screenplays, because I think I just Googled it. It was like, what is screenwriting? But he was a playwright. And so he was like, I don't know how to write screenplays, but I'll teach you how to write plays. I remember first learning through just reading like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf and Death of the Salesman and all of those. But I do sometimes think about like, I feel like, at least I don't know, Aviva, what your experience has been, but for creating original content in today's world, like I've definitely had stories like that I've written as like a short script or a screenplay where someone's read it and been like, why don't you write this as a book or like a graphic novel or something first? So then like you, I don't know, I'm kind of wondering if like your thoughts on that, if like maybe to create like that first like, you know, book material to then
I think that
adapt.
if you can take an original idea of yours and put it in another form, you know, my book Hanging Up, the movie is based on my is novel.
Yeah.
And I'm not crazy about the movie, but you know what? I have the book.
Mm.
That book is my voice and told my story told my way, and I can't tell you what a comfort it is. And I try not to sell original. I have one original screenplay that's been in development now for 22 years.
Ah.
It's more directors than you can imagine, and I've been fired and rehired a million times recently. A new director wants to do a new draft, and I regret that I didn't write this story as a book. I mean, because then it would be out there and that would be published, but I don't even know what form it's going to be taking. And if something is precious to you, I think it is very good to put it out there a different way if you can. I mean, if it's an original. I mean,
Right,
sometimes
yeah.
an idea just is a series idea or something like that. And actually in series, writers have more power than they do in film. Not if you're, I guess, a member of just the team or something, but if you created it.
Yeah, yeah. I've thought about, yeah, branching into novel writing. I never have, but the rom-com, you know, book is so popular right now. I see that on social media, like so many, you know, it's a really top genre right now. I feel like more than in the film world where there really aren't that many rom-coms being made besides, you know, Hallmark and all the streamers doing it. But yeah.
And Delia, I feel like you have done a lot of like adapting books for the screen, right? Because I know you wrote one of my favorite scripts or movies was the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, and that book series in the film, I feel like I love both of them. And I believe the This Is My Life was from a book as well too that you had adapted for the
Yeah, Nora and
screen.
I adapted that as her first movie. That's a Meg Wolitzer novel. It's a wonderful book. And we had a great time adapting it because we were on an adventure, you know, where it's about sisters and a working mother. And so it was right in our ballpark. And it was Nora's first attempt to be a director. And if you're going to try it the first time, you should be at home with the material as much as you possibly can. So I love that movie very much.
That's
Very,
actually one of my favorite
very
of
dear to
your
my
films.
heart. We had so much fun doing it. It was a real adventure. It was wonderful. Sisterhood, I was just hired to do the first, I did it. And then somebody else came on after. I don't have a strong feeling about that movie. I mean, you know, it's a nice movie. I get some nice mail on it and some nice residuals, but I don't think of it as anything. It's a wonderful book.
Yeah.
I think her name's Amber Shares,
Mhm.
and it was just you know, begging to be made into a movie. And I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, definitely. We grew up on so many of your films, but yeah,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. But This Is My Life is like I love the all of the different relationships in that movie, and just like the dialogue of the kids is just like I feel like you're so good at giving like the kids these sort of like adult like lines that just hit so perfectly.
Thank you very much. I absolutely love that movie. And
Yeah.
I love the joy ride that we were on when we made it. We didn't really know what we were doing, so it had this edge.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know, it's yeah, I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it felt very ahead of its time too. I watched it for the first time a few years ago, and I remember thinking like, man, like how what like, and I'd love to hear like your thoughts on this. Is just like the kind of confidence that I feel like you both had to make a movie like that, and like I think that's something that you know today, Aviva and I talk a lot about this on our podcast. Is just for women trying to tell woman-centered stories more often now, and like constantly sort of I don't know, I feel like a lot of us do struggle with that fear to tell maybe these more like, you know, I don't know, daring stories that I think at this time it's been a little bit harder to push them forward.
I think that the marketplace is always, it's always a problem, the marketplace, because it's probably never listing toward female or to the strong females or anything like that. But what Nora and I knew about her first movie was that it had to be personal, because we couldn't predict whether it would be successful or not, but we knew we could make it good if it had our fingerprint. And this story about two sisters and a working mother, this was she's a comedian. It was absolutely a match to both of us. And so we knew that we would make something true. And your writing is your fingerprint. Never forget that. Don't look out there and think, oh, they want to do that, so I'll do that, because you're not going to be any good at that. But you'll be good at whatever it is that means something to you. So we knew that. And in fact, it was not a hit. It only opened wide in like 3 cities, but it was good. And Nora got a second movie. All your first movie has to do is get you your second. And it has this, following like you, people who love it. I absolutely adore it. So it launched Nora's career in a wonderful way. But the reason that movie was able to happen was because Nora had written When Harry Met Sally, and it was a sensation. The head of Fox wanted to give her, let her direct, which is also very rare then. There weren't a million. There are a lot more women directors now than there were then. There were very few. So that was also true. And Julie Kavner I love Julie Kavner. She's a friend. So, she was just suited for it. And she was also having a moment as well. And so everything just came together for it. It was a low budget movie. We made it in Toronto, and it was really fun. We were all in the same hotel, and it's, camp. It was like camp. So, but I didn't like camp, but I like.
Yeah, film camp. Yeah, that sounds so fun. Yeah, Gabby Hoffman. I'm such a fan of her, especially in all her childhood roles.
Like 8 years older. I mean, she was so incredible. Anything in the moment. I mean, I don't even think we read anyone but her. The casting was, I have the person, and in comes Gabby. She's really darling. Anyway.
She was knitting, so kind of like crocheting. I wonder if that you influenced that.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
She knits in the film. Gabby Hoffman's character.
She's like always knitting.
That's hysterical. No.
Yeah, she's very precocious. Yeah, I don't think I knitted that young. We would also, of course, love to talk about You've Got Mail, because that is one that we reference all the time on this show, and I'm sure our listeners, that's like their favorite film. So many of our listeners would say that. So can you talk about how You've Got Mail came to be, and what it was like to write it and all of that?
You've Got Mail was originally in 1937 a play in, if not Bulgaria, then Romania, someplace really obscure in the middle of the world, okay? And then it was a movie called This Shop Around the Corner, starring Jimmy Stewart, and of course I always blank on the other person who's brilliant. I love that movie. All right, then it was a movie starring Judy Garland called In the Old Summertime. Then it was a musical on Broadway called She Loves Me. And then it was You've Got Mail. So this is a story that has such legs, you cannot believe it. I mean, this is a story that's been reinvented 5 or 6 times, and will probably have another invention. And the plot is the same in every one. 2 people are in love in the mail, but hate each other in person. And then one of them finds out. Okay, that's the whole thing of it. All right. So, and there are scenes that are in every single one of these movies. A scene where in our movie, Tom's looking in the restaurant and realizes it's this woman he hates at work is the woman he's in love with in them. That scene is the same in every single edition of this thing. So the reason when Lauren Schuler Donner came to us and asked us to write it, and we replaced Wendy Wasserstein, by the way, she was the first writer on it. She's a famous playwright. When they asked us to do it, the reason they did was that they realized that because of email, there was a new way to do the story. they could be in love on email and not know that they were in love in person. And email was just happening then. It was AOL, everyone was on AOL. So it had a reason to get made again. It was always a magical story. And then you just needed to figure out what, in the other versions of it, they worked in the same place. But you know what? That doesn't work. It didn't give us enough stakes. So stakes are critical in any drama. So we had these giant bookstores coming in that were putting the little stores out of business. So we had him putting her out of business. So there were huge reasons for her to dislike him in person. Yeah. So, we had to adjust the story, but there it was. I mean, this gorgeous, gorgeous piece of work.
We love it so much. It's so cozy. I tend to watch it, this time of year. I just rewatched it last week. It's so wonderful.
I think what Nora understood and very much passed on to me in writing rom-coms, so to speak, although we never called them that, is that the people in them are smart, that the movies are smart. And I think that's one reason why they stick. It's of course the chemistry is critical, and Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan has gorgeous chemistry, and they both have lovely comedy as well as drama. So, there's a million reasons why a movie works or doesn't work and everything. But I think when I look at the body of Nora's work, it's so smart.
It really is. And Kathleen's character, I think, is who we all aspire to be. She's very aspirational. She's
that's right.
Smart.
Yeah,
she's just lovely.
A lot of romances, they don't feel smart, or the stakes aren't very interesting. Okay, one's getting married to somebody else that they don't love. I mean, that's not very interesting.
We agree.
I just remembered, I was telling Aviva, I was at the gym last week and I have a sweatshirt that says the shop around the corner on it. And this guy came up to me and he was like, oh, that's from You've Got Mail. And at first I was like impressed that he got the reference, but then he was like, but I'm more of a Fox's Books guy. I was just like, what's that mean?
Yeah, he knows that. Wait a minute. Can you see this? Can you see that back there?
The post.
This one is Saturday night, or the one to the right? Is that the shop around the corner sign?
Yeah, it's a sign from the bookstore.
I was gonna say I can tell from like the shape of it.
Yeah,
I love the set.
That's adorable. Movie. But yeah, actually, I would love to hear a little bit of your thoughts on, because Aviva and I, again, talk about this a lot on our podcast of kind of like why movies like yours and Nora's have feel like they stood the test of time. And I do really think a lot of it is exactly what you just said, that like the characters are smart, they're relatable. And I also think too that you're a really brilliant dialogue writer, and that like a lot of that comes too from just like hearing people speak in ways that people actually speak. And I'm kind of curious if you could talk a little bit about what you think makes good dialogue, and like, I don't know, any tips or advice you might have for our writers on specifically writing dialogue.
Okay, my mother used to give me advice about writing when I wasn't writing. But one of the things she said to me when I was a kid was, if you want to be a writer, write a letter and take off the salutation. Okay, so right away she's telling you that the way you speak is the way you can write.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if that isn't a dialogue note, I don't know.
Yeah.
What is. Then I think it's just that, if you have a good ear. I mean, that's part of what being a writer is, I think, having a good ear and having stories to tell. I think everybody has stories to tell, and I do think it's about going inside yourself. I think writing from your heart is always the place to begin. And I think almost in all the movies that Nora and I worked on together, we always tried to find the thing that was personal for us. Mm-hmm. So in You've Got Mail, our mother was obsessed with books and with children's books. And we read children's books. I just love children's books. To this day, they're my favorite books. And I read Anne of Green Gables every year. So and The Blue Castle is magnificent. Anyway, so I think that there was a real love of language in my family so when we were doing the You've Got Mail, we put them in a bookstore, and we put her in a children's bookstore because we loved children's books. And, her mother had the bookstore. So there was this beautiful connection that we felt personal about. And that, I think, if you can find that, and in This Is My Life, of course, it's a story of two sisters and a working mother. So we totally knew what that was. And we would try to find things all along the way that were personal. You write better if you write personal. But I mean, some people really do love fantasy, and that's what they've loved their whole life, and then that's what they should write because that's where their heart is. But we were more, I can't speak for Nora, I was much more practical. We were different in that she's much more extroverted, and also she was a journalist, and journalists like to collect everything and make decisions based on everything they understand. And I'm not, I'm introverted and like to work completely from the inside. And so we had different approaches to life as well as to work.
I'm curious as well what it was like, what it's like in general to co-write something. So you co-wrote these projects. How did that work? Because Isabel and I want to write something together maybe one day, but
Yeah.
we're working on our own stuff.
I mean, what I think about collaboration is that you have to be on the same page about the subject and emotionally similar in certain ways that make it a comfort in the room. You know, I think that a story can't be exceptionally personal to one of you and not as personal to another of you, or the balance is out. That can be a problem. So that if you come to it with the same investment, and if you decide, let's say you were an expert in car racing or something, one of you, and you say, I have this great idea for a car race, and the other one comes in, the other one doesn't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
They don't understand the world. So I would say, a movie needs a world. You need to know what world you're in, and you both should have a similar investment, but you can have different strengths. I mean, Nora, one of the reasons we collaborated on that first movie is that children, that's one of my things. I'm very good at them. And Nora knew there would be two younger sisters in this, and we are sisters as well. So that was completely great. She's wildly funny, and that would work for us really gorgeously. So, but we had this bond of sisterhood in the thing, but Nora also understood that I was very good on children. So, it's good to have compliments, but it's not good if one of you, if it's the story of, the loss of your beloved dog, but the other one's never had a pet, I don't think that it's a good thing to collaborate on.
Yeah, that makes sense. You need that emotional connection for sure.
An equal emotional connection.
Yeah.
But if you guys think each other is really funny and great and everything, why don't you do it?
Oh, me too. I'm down.
We've had some ideas back and forth.
I think that'd be really, really fun. We want to we need more rom-coms in the world for sure. But for now, we're just rewatching yours.
Yeah, I know. I'm also curious to kind of hear your thoughts on like the current, I don't know if there's any like current rom-coms that you've seen, or just like what your thoughts are on current films being made. And
oddly, I think rom-com is a kind of diminutive word for a group of movies that are about love. And I think when you're not in love, going to a romantic movie is where you believe it's possible. And if you're already in love, that's where you get to go and fall in love again. So I think they're just about as important as any form could be in terms of exploring people's feelings and emotions, and there's joy to be had in life. A rom-com itself usually ends when the couple falls in love. That's why my play is not a rom-com, it's romance, because it takes you through the intensity of the marriage as well, and then the happy thing that happens after the threat of my illness is over, and it's so joyful. But a rom-com based on basically Pride and Prejudice, it's when Emma, it's when it's over, she's marrying Mr. Knightley, and that's when, they end at the beginning of life, so anyway, I don't even remember what the question is. What is the question?
We're just asking your thoughts on like current movies, current rom-coms.
Really, I saw this one I love called Falling for Figaro, which takes place in Scotland, and it is truly divine. And that's the most recent one that I've seen that I really liked. I haven't seen any others recently. In fact, I was watching a lot of them and being absolutely horrified by them. because they are so phenomenally sexist. You know, I mean, since my favorite rom-com in the world is Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, when these brothers go and kidnap women out of their windows, and it was probably the most destructive movie I've ever seen in my life, but it still remains that dance number between the townies and the brothers is just one of the greatest moments in the world. So I will still watch it, but I'm starting to think, should I show this to Peter's granddaughter? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're very screwed up. And the Billy Wilder movie with Marilyn Monroe and Gene Kelly, what do you know what I'm talking about? Where he dresses as a woman to go on into this band, and
I've
she's
heard of this. I'm not.
Yes, this sounds really familiar. What's
haven't
the
seen the Billy Wilder film. Anyway, I tried to watch that again, and it's very famous, and I was very put off by the way they imitated women. You know, there's a lot of stuff in old romantic movies that is pretty shocking. I really love Bridesmaids. I thought that was great. I love Singing in the Rain, but you know, very much. But it's not that easy to find one that doesn't in some way, you know, throw you because of men and women. How, you know, how much that's based on getting to make a man flapjacks, which is what Seven Brides is about.
Yeah.
It makes flapjacks for seven men even worse.
These movies have so much power in how we perceive romance in real life, you know, especially when consumed at a young age. I think a lot of the way that I see romantic love is just through the lens of all these films. So they do have influence.
Well, I think, you know, I mean, I feel like we put nice movies out there, smart women, smart men, you know, love stories that make sense and people who make sense, you know, you know, I'd like to say that I left all that.
Definitely.
Do you have a project of yours that remains like your favorite that you think, like, I'd be kind of curious?
Well, right now my favorite is absolutely Left on 10th.
Yeah.
It's on Broadway right now, and I go a couple times a week just because I love to experience it and to see the actors and to just be part of it. And it just opened, I don't know, a month ago. So up until that time, it was as immersive as anything I've ever dealt with, you know.
I would be curious about your writing practice now. So you were talking about how you used to schedule in time, 4 hours a day. Is that similar now? And like, yeah, what is your creative life now?
You know, now, I mean, I just love to write. So I write anytime I want to and all the time. And I mean, there's a thing of starting something and how much harder it is to start something. And then, but the first 40 pages, almost anyone can write. The next, whatever, the whole middle of the book is the hardest thing you've ever tried to do in your life. And then the end gets easier. You know, there are all these journeys that you take into the woods with writing, but I'm happiest at my desk. I would say it's a comfort zone for me, and coming into my office and knowing I can sit down. I can write an essay now very quickly, but other things are just as much of a struggle. It's just that it's home now.
Yeah.
And now it's home, and it's a lovely place to be.
Yeah. Escapism for sure.
Yeah.
And therapy as well.
Yeah. I mean, I took a lot of notes during the time that when I was recovering from my illness. I made a ton of notes, and it turned out to be very useful, you know, when I was writing the book to go back.
How do you know when something you're writing is done, either like both ready to show somebody or is like the final draft of it?
Well, that's interesting. You know, I have my girlfriends, my writer girlfriends, and they see, you know, Dina and Julia see everything I write. Peter reads for me. Jerry, my late husband, used to read for me all the time. I don't have any problem. I know when I'm ready. I know when I'm ready to show it. And then I just say, it's a mess, but I'm worried about this, that, and the other. You know, there's a real comfort because I'm not giving it to a stranger. You know, I'm giving it to a bestie. Who only wants the best for me and knows how to write themselves. And you know, writing is rewriting. That's the story of being a writer, is knowing how to rewrite. And so that's part of the process for me.
Yeah.
And when it's done is if it opens. If it's a play, that's when you lock it about 2 weeks before you lock it. But, when you put it up, you're still changing it every night because you see what plays and what doesn't. It's pretty scary then. And then it's locked, and that's a comfort. and a movie's done when it's done, but and the same with a book, at some point you've gone through it a million times and then you get the proofs and, but you do rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. At least I do.
Definitely.
Yeah, I definitely do that too.
Yeah, same.
That's the fun of it.
Yeah.
You think that you're getting a friend on your computer and you're just, oh, this is such a nice place to be. I'm having such a good time with my work.
Yeah, I do love having those moments where I go into like, okay, I'm gonna go hang out with my friends now, like in my little like character world.
Definitely. Have you dealt with writer's block? I'm just curious, because it seems like you have such a positive relationship with writing.
Yes,
I love
did.
writing. Yeah, tell me what you.
When I sold my book, when I wrote that piece in the New York Times, and then on the Monday I got a book contract, I didn't really have any skills, any routine at all. And suddenly the thing I had dreamed of happening was happening. And I found the craziest guy in the world to have a relationship with and messed up my whole life for like 3 months. Thank God, only if even that. But I knew that and that's when I realized I had to sit down at the computer 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon. And I had to turn hard into habit. And that's when I took it really seriously. And that's when I became a writer. So first I just kind of cracked up. And then I pulled myself together and said, you got to write this book. I mean, I had a book to write. So that was, I had an advance, minor, but then you could live on it. And so, but I needed to pull myself together. And I almost, I tried to wreck it.
I'm also curious about, I know a lot of our listeners, we're dealing with a lot of rejection as writers. It can get hard and we just have to have tenacity. And I'm just curious if you have any advice or insight about like how to stay confident in our creativity and what we've written after we get so many no's. And yeah,
where are you getting no's from?
Well, in the screenwriting world, producers, when we're querying or in contests. Yeah, we're both at the beginning of trying to break in. So, I signed a shopping agreement last year, but we're still trying to get that first credit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's an art to pitching, and it's to make them want to work with you. So you've got to say why, first of all, figure out how to express it simply, and also say why it's personal, why this is something that you get, that you can do better than anyone else. Yeah. So I would say, and know what your first, second, and third act breaks are, and know why anyone would want to see it. And you should be able to do that fairly quickly. And pitches are like blind dates. Yeah. Sometimes you like the person and sometimes it's almost instantaneous. You don't. I'll tell you, I think it's very difficult because I used to be, when you had something to pitch, you went into a studio and you all sat on a couch and you knew almost before you pitched it whether you would all want to be in business together in a way. And now, the last time I pitched a series, I went into a conference room and there was no conversation. I had to pitch it in like 20 minutes and get out. And now you don't even meet anyone in person and you're just pitching on a Zoom call. And I think that all that distance that's getting put between people is making this harder. And the only reason I say this is that I'm sympathetic to how difficult it is to learn to put something over like that. You have to make them want you. And that's much harder on a Zoom than it is in person.
Yeah.
I bet that's true. Yeah.
It's harder to establish a rapport. So I'm sympathetic. I sold my book as a movie, but it was already in book form. So I didn't really, and then I told them how I would do the movie. It was very friendly, but I haven't pitched in a long time. And I understand it's very rare now that people are selling off pitches.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't say I absolutely know how to break in. I don't think living in Seattle makes it easier, by the way. Which one of you is there?
I'm in
You
Seattle, outside of Seattle.
Seattle?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because part of it is knowing people.
Yeah.
It's actually, I mean, look, I don't like Los Angeles and I don't want to live there anymore. And Aviva, do you like it there?
In Seattle? I'm in Seattle. Isabel's in LA. Yeah.
Oh,
I
Isabel.
do like LA because I live near the beach in Santa Monica, so I feel like I've kind of like I've moved here very intentionally. So, but I actually almost feel like Aviva might know more people than I do because she's very good at networking.
I'm trying to get to know more like local film communities, but definitely, obviously, more is happening in LA than the Pacific
Yeah,
West.
that's true.
That's where the movie business is. You
Yeah.
know, so to want to be a screenwriter and a beginning screenwriter and live in Seattle is difficult. You know, I think it's more difficult. And I think in LA, it's a lot of it is getting to know people, a
Yeah.
certain amount of networking going on. And it's tricky. I don't really understand the business right now because I'm not really in it. I'm now writing in every other form that I can write in as well.
Yeah.
So, and I know it was easier then. I mean, I know it was, but also I sold things off books. I mean, I was able to sell off books and they used to make all these television movies. I got jobs as as a writer of a movie for television, which doesn't really exist anymore. Now it's streaming, it's a different kind of a thing, it's more features. I really don't know how to, I don't know, I don't have any good advice
Yeah.
for someone trying to navigate that business now.
We interviewed a local filmmaker. She lives in my area. And she was really making us think she's an indie filmmaker. She was making Isabel and myself like think about, making our own projects. And that was really what she was emphasizing with us. And a few other people we've interviewed too, that we can't really rely on Hollywood necessarily to make our scripts, but to be determined.
So if you want to work on a show, you should probably write a spec script and get, do either of you have agents?
Not yet.
Well, you're really at the beginning,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I do think that being out of that city is not, I mean, I don't know how important it is for you to live in Seattle, but you might want to consider. And I don't think, I mean, I'm glad that you're happy enough in LA, but it's not where I necessarily want to live, but it is where all the work is. And it's very hard to get noticed out of it. And the alternative is to raise your own money, make your own movie, get into one of these festivals and get noticed.
Yeah.
I mean, I have friends here who did a short that got into Sundance and they won the short thing and they're now raising money to make their own film. So, and they just got hired for their first screenwriting assignment. So that's, there's that route. There's writing your movie, making it simple so you can shoot it. This is my life took place almost entirely inside, and so that there's that route also. And really mind what your talent is. Figure out what your talent is and mine it. Don't try to write some other way to get attention.
Yeah.
Figure out your fingerprint.
Mm-hmm.
Also, get published in the New York Times. Write a modern love piece. Modern love is a huge, huge thing.
Yeah.
This conversation is definitely making me think about exploring other forms of writing, beyond screenwriting, which of course we've thought about before, but I really love the idea of, having more creative control and doing all the mediums,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was wondering, I meant to ask earlier, so you said that you sold the play as a movie as well. Do you plan to write the script for that and be involved in
I
film?
have written it. I have written it.
Crazy.
I don't ever fantasize about. I hope it will get made. I have wonderful producers. The studio likes it. I don't know what that means. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't dream about movies getting made. I'll tell you that. I keep my dreams in a more reasonable area of life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's quickly transition to the rapid fire. So our first question is, what is your favorite romantic comedy and why? And it can be your own or another one.
No, I'm Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need to watch it. I've never seen it.
God, it's gonna make you sick, but it's so fabulous. Okay.
I'll watch it.
Yeah, I will too. Do you have a favorite trope to write?
What's a trope?
Like
Yeah.
enemies to lovers or
No, I don't.
nope.
I don't. All sorts of things. I mean, there are things I wouldn't try,
Yeah.
like violence, but I love psychological dramas.
Mhm.
I mean, Syracuse, my novel is a psychological thriller.
Do you have a favorite outfit from a romantic comedy? It can also be in your own collection of movies, or
Oh yeah, the shirts that the guys wear in Seven Brides when they do the dance number with the townies.
I'm gonna watch this.
I know, I can't wait to watch this now.
We already kind of answered that. You already answered this question, but yeah, have you seen the romantic comedy that recently that you'd recommend?
Yeah, Falling for Figaro.
Yeah, we're gonna watch. I think it's on Netflix. That sounds very familiar.
I know.
It's definitely streaming, and I don't know where, but yes.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I've definitely seen it on
So
stream platform.
divine, and also you know who's in it? Joanna Lumley, who's in. Did I say that before? She's in Ab Fab, and she's so genius, the comedian, and she's brilliant in it.
Oh, that's
So,
awesome.
have you seen Ab Fab? Absolutely fabulous. You haven't seen it?
I'm getting a lot of great recommendations
Yeah,
from you.
I'm gonna watch it.
English, easy, so funny.
Okay, so if there is there like a movie that you would make, like if there's one movie that you've been working on, or there's something you could greenlight for yourself that you'd love to see happen. Is there a project of yours you'd like to do?
Yeah, Sammy, my dog movie that's been in development for 22 years.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, is it the 22-year development one? Maybe 2025 will be the year.
Amazing. I love obsessed with dogs. Yeah. Okay. And just to wrap it up, I mean, we've talked about your play, but like, can you, like, how can people see your work right now? How long is the play?
How long is the play? Yeah.
It's on, at the James Earl Jones Theater on Broadway, and it is going to make you so happy if you see it. It's so full of joy.
How long is it running there?
Make you laugh and cry. It's a closed-end run, 5 months.
Okay.
That's a long time. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have an opportunity to
I know, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Plan a trip to New York next year.
All right.
And is there anywhere?
Talk to you. I wish you good luck on your careers.
Thank you so much.
It was an honor to chat with you, truly. Like, thank you.
We appreciate your time so much, and just thank you for all of the movies you've made, and we hope we get to see the Sammy one in the future too.
Yeah, your films mean so much to us. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right. Keep writing.
Thank you.
Bye.
This has been an episode of When Isabel Met Aviva. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to stay up to date with our episodes, please subscribe, and bonus points if you leave us a positive review. You can follow us on Instagram at When Isabel Met Aviva, and on Twitter/X, Isabel Metaviva. We're both on Instagram and Bluesky.social now. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, we're doing Bluesky. We'll just put that all in the show notes.
Yeah, everything will be in the show notes. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, you need advice about your screenwriting career, or if you just want to obsess over rom-coms with us. Look in the show notes for all of the links to our website, to our social media, to our new Bluesky accounts.
Yeah, it's all there. And of course, if you have a second, please give us 5 stars on Spotify. It takes 5 seconds. Like, you just click the star number.
Yes, and that helps us so much.
It really does. It makes us look more legit, and it will help us grow. And then if you have extra time, Apple Podcast review would be awesome.
Thank you. See you guys next time.
See you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.